He woke up next to the chief's daughter. At dawn, 321 warriors waited for the wedding. The sun had already begun its slow descent behind the distant hills when he arrived at the village. His feet were tired from the long journey, his clothes dusty from the road, but his eyes were bright with curiosity. The village seemed almost frozen in time, with small huts made of wood and straw, smoke curling lazily from the chimneys, and children running and laughing between them. There was a sense of life here that felt untouched by the outside world, and yet there was a rhythm, a quiet order that hinted at traditions older than anyone could remember. He had traveled far, guided by the tales of a welcoming people and the hope of learning something new, but he had never imagined a night like this could happen. As he approached the entrance, the villagers' eyes turned toward him. Some stared openly while others whispered to each other. He sensed both curiosity and caution. Outsiders were not common here, and the villagers were careful in their dealings with strangers. He raised his hands slightly, a gesture of peace, and gave a small smile. Slowly, a man in a finely decorated tunic, the sort of person who carried himself with authority, came forward. "Welcome," the man said, his voice firm but not unkind. "You are far from home." He nodded and explained that he was just a traveler, seeking stories and experiences, wanting to understand their way of life. The man studied him for a long moment, as if weighing the truth in his words. Finally, he motioned him to follow. "It is evening," the man said, "and soon we will celebrate a special occasion. You may stay for the night if you wish, but be careful. Our customs are not the same as those of your lands." Curiosity and a little excitement mingled with caution as he followed. The air smelled of wood smoke and cooked food, warm and inviting after his long journey. The sounds of drums and singing drifted from the center of the village, and he realized that a festival or ceremony was taking place. He had heard from travelers about the upcoming wedding of the chief's daughter, a moment of great importance to the community, and now he would witness it up close. The house he was led to was the largest in the village, the chief's own home. Its walls were adorned with carvings and decorations, each telling a story he could not yet read. The smell of incense and food filled the air, making him both hungry and uneasy. As he entered, he noticed people moving gracefully around him, their faces a mix of smiles and wary glances. He understood immediately that he was a guest in a delicate situation. One misstep could offend someone or disrupt the preparations. That evening, he was offered food and drink, and although he was careful with his manners, he could not help but notice the chief's daughter. She moved with an elegance that seemed natural, as if the world had always existed for her to navigate it with ease. Her eyes, dark and curious, met his briefly, and a faint smile crossed her lips. He quickly looked away, aware that a stranger should not draw attention to themselves, yet he could not erase the image from his mind. The night wore on with laughter, music, and dancing. He joined in as best he could, trying not to embarrass himself. There was a warmth among the villagers that was easy to feel, and slowly his anxiety faded. Stories were told by the fire, tales of courage, love, and honor that seemed alive in the gestures and voices of those telling them. He listened intently, grateful for their kindness, yet a small part of him remained aware of the importance of the moment. The wedding was tomorrow, and the chief's family would soon be the center of attention for the entire village. As the evening drew to a close, he was shown a place to rest. The room was simple but comfortable, and he felt a sense of relief. He had managed to navigate the day without offending anyone, and now he could rest before the ceremonies of the morning. But sleep came slowly. Thoughts of the chief, the daughter, the villagers, and the drums that echoed in the distance kept his mind alert. He knew he was an outsider in a world that moved by its own rules, and he worried about what the coming day would bring. At some point, a quiet knock came at the door. Hesitant, he opened it to find the chief's daughter standing there, a small smile on her lips. She said nothing at first, simply gesturing for him to follow. Confused but intrigued, he stepped into the dimly lit hallway behind her. She led him through the house, past rooms filled with sleeping villagers, to a small chamber at the far end. There, the candlelight flickered against the walls, casting shadows that danced across the floor. She turned to him and spoke softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She explained that the room was meant for him to rest, that he should not worry about the customs for now, and that no harm would come to him. Her words were gentle, reassuring, and yet there was a mischief in her eyes that he could not understand. Somehow the moment felt intimate, though he reminded himself constantly that he was a guest and she was the chief's daughter. He nodded, trying to show gratitude without overstepping. They talked quietly about simple things, his journey, the village, the stories he had heard. Time seemed to slow, the outside world disappearing, leaving only the two of them and the soft glow of the candlelight. He felt an unexpected sense of calm, though he knew that the night held the potential for misunderstanding. Eventually, exhaustion overcame him. He lay down, intending only to rest for a few hours before the dawn. But the room was small, the space shared, and when he woke it was to find the chief's daughter there, awake as well. Panic surged through him. He had been careful, respectful, and yet somehow fate had placed them together at the very moment when appearances mattered most. His mind raced, thinking of the villagers, the warriors, the chief, and the stories that would spread if anyone discovered the truth. Outside, the first light of dawn began to break, casting a soft glow across the village. The distant sound of drums reached him, steady and rhythmic, signaling the start of the day's events. He realized that the wedding preparations were already in motion. 321 warriors he had heard from the whispers the night before were gathered and ready for the ceremony. His heart pounded. Every second counted now. He had to act quickly, carefully, without causing offense or panic. The daughter, sensing his fear, offered only a small, knowing smile. She seemed untroubled, even amused by the situation. In that moment he understood something important. She was not a helpless bystander. She was part of the story, and her response would shape everything that followed. He had to think fast, but he also had to be honest and respectful. One wrong word, one wrong gesture could change everything. As he dressed quietly, careful not to disturb her or the room, he tried to formulate a plan. He would have to explain himself to the chief, somehow demonstrate his respect for the tribe's traditions, and pray that his intentions were understood. The weight of the situation pressed down on him, yet there was also a strange thrill. Life had placed him here, in a moment full of danger, curiosity, and potential for understanding. He had always sought adventure, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. Stepping out into the corridor, he glimpsed the village awakening. Smoke from the chimneys drifted higher now, the sound of voices carrying through the crisp morning air. Children ran to the fields, women prepared food, and the warriors, strong and disciplined, adjusted their ceremonial garments. Everything was ready for the wedding. Everything, that is, except for him. The chief's daughter followed silently, a quiet support that gave him a measure of courage. He knew he had to face the chief, to speak truthfully and to act with respect. He would have to rely on his wits, his honesty, and perhaps a bit of luck. The day was beginning, and with it came challenges, misunderstandings, and opportunities for courage. The first rays of the sun touched the rooftops as he took a deep breath. This was not just another day of travel or adventure. This was a test, a moment where he had to navigate the complex world of customs, honor, and human relationships. And though fear lingered, so did a quiet hope. Perhaps in the midst of this extraordinary circumstance, he would find not only safety but understanding, and maybe even friendship or trust he had never expected to encounter. The village stirred more fully now. The distant drums grew louder, and he could see the warriors forming, one by one, a sea of strength and tradition, ready for the ceremony that would define the day. His heart raced with anticipation, knowing that the coming hours would require every ounce of courage, every careful word, and every respectful gesture he could muster. Yet somewhere deep within, he felt a spark of determination. He would face what came next, one step at a time, and hope that the outcome would honor both the traditions of the village and his own sense of honesty and decency. And so, as the first golden light of dawn bathed the village, he prepared to step into a day unlike any he had ever known. A day of courage, of respect, of understanding, and perhaps, in ways he could not yet imagine, a day of beginnings. The first light of dawn stretched across the village, painting the rooftops in soft shades of gold. Birds chirped from the trees, and the faint smell of morning fires drifted on the cool air. Yet the calm beauty of the morning hid a tension that hummed through every corner of the village. For the villagers, today was not an ordinary day. It was the day of the chief's daughter's wedding, a day that had been planned and prepared for weeks. Every decoration, every drum, every ceremonial garment was in place. And now, unknown to many, the presence of the outsider had added a new layer of uncertainty. He had dressed quickly, careful to respect the customs he had observed the night before. His clothing, while simple, had been made acceptable by the chief's household, and he hoped it would show his respect without drawing unnecessary attention. The chief's daughter walked beside him silently. She seemed calm, as if she had anticipated that the situation might unfold this way. Her composed demeanor gave him a small measure of courage, though his heart still beat wildly. Every step they took brought them closer to the central gathering, where 321 warriors waited, their faces serious, their posture disciplined. The warriors were a sight to behold. Each one stood straight, their ceremonial attire gleaming in the morning sun. Some held long spears, others carried shields carved with intricate designs that told stories of battles and bravery. Their eyes were fixed ahead, yet he could sense their awareness of the newcomer. Whispers passed from one to another, subtle movements that conveyed curiosity, caution, and respect for their traditions. For a moment, he felt like a lone traveler caught in the middle of history unfolding before him. The village square where the wedding would take place was alive with movement. Villagers prepared food, arranged flowers, and adjusted decorations. The drums sounded again, this time louder, marking the progression of the ceremony. Children were guided to sit in orderly rows, elders took their places with quiet dignity, and the chief himself appeared, resplendent in ceremonial garb, his expression a mixture of pride and concern. He had heard the whispers during the night but had yet to see the outsider. His mind worked quickly, considering honor, tradition, and the potential disruption that could arise from any misunderstanding. The chief's eyes met the outsider's for a brief moment, and he raised a hand slightly, not in greeting but in acknowledgement. The outsider bowed respectfully, understanding that this gesture alone carried weight. One wrong move could offend the chief, the daughter, or the assembled warriors, and he felt the full weight of the responsibility pressing on him. He reminded himself to stay calm, to act with honesty, and to respect the rules of this place, no matter how unfamiliar they seemed. As they approached the square, the chief's daughter spoke softly. "Do not fear," she said, her voice barely audible over the hum of activity. "The warriors and the villagers will judge your actions, but they also respect honesty. If you act with respect, they will understand." Her words were comforting, yet they also reminded him that he had no room for error. He nodded, grateful for her guidance, and continued forward. The first challenge came immediately. An elder, one of the village's most respected figures, stepped forward to greet him. His eyes were sharp, as if seeing into the heart of anyone who approached. "Who are you?" the elder asked, his voice calm but firm. "What is your purpose here?" The outsider spoke truthfully, explaining that he was a traveler, a guest seeking understanding, and that he had never intended disrespect. He mentioned the events of the previous night carefully, mindful not to exaggerate or make excuses. The elder listened, nodding slowly, his expression unreadable. Around them, villagers whispered quietly, some frowning, others simply curious. The outsider realized that every word, every gesture was being watched, evaluated, and remembered. While the elder considered his words, the chief took his place at the front of the gathering. His presence commanded attention, and the warriors shifted subtly, showing their readiness. The chief's gaze swept over the assembled villagers, then returned to the outsider. There was a silent communication, a test of courage and composure. The outsider straightened, taking a deep breath, and prepared to face whatever came next. The chief's daughter was called forward, her movements graceful and deliberate. She wore ceremonial garments that shimmered with intricate patterns, each stitch and bead telling a story. Her eyes, calm yet observant, met his briefly, giving him a sense of reassurance. She stepped to his side as the chief spoke, her voice soft as she explained to the villagers the situation of the outsider. Her words framed him not as a troublemaker, but as someone caught by circumstance, someone who sought only to honor their traditions. The tension in the square eased slightly, but it did not disappear. The warriors, trained to uphold the tribe's customs, watched carefully. Any sign of disrespect or misunderstanding could escalate quickly. The outsider understood this, and he felt a growing respect for the discipline and pride of the warriors. He realized that the ceremony was not just a wedding, it was a living expression of culture, a moment when honor, courage, and respect intersected in ways he had never experienced. The chief raised his hand, signaling for silence. His voice carried across the square, steady and commanding. "Today we celebrate tradition," he began. "But we must also honor honesty and courage. This outsider has arrived in a moment of great importance. He has shown respect, but he must now prove his understanding of our ways. He must show that he honors what we hold sacred." A murmur of agreement passed through the crowd. The outsider nodded, understanding that his actions in the coming moments would determine not only his own fate, but also how he would be remembered in this village. He felt a mixture of fear and determination. He had never faced such a test before, yet he knew that respect and honesty could carry him forward. The first step was a ceremonial task. He was guided to a small platform where the chief and elders demonstrated the proper way to present a gift, a sign of respect and goodwill. He carefully observed, noting every movement, every gesture. Then, with trembling hands, he repeated the actions. Each movement had to be precise, deliberate, and respectful. The villagers watched intently, their eyes following every step. When he completed the task, a quiet pause fell over the square. The chief and the elders exchanged glances, then nodded. It was a small success, but an important one. The warriors relaxed slightly, the tension easing as the outsider demonstrated his willingness to learn and honor their traditions. He felt a small surge of relief, but he knew that the day was far from over. The wedding ceremony itself was about to begin, and he had yet to prove himself fully. As the drums began again, the procession moved forward. The chief's daughter led the way, her presence a constant reminder that the outsider was not alone. Villagers lined the path, some offering smiles of encouragement, others watching with cautious curiosity. The outsider followed, his steps measured, his mind focused on the task at hand. He understood that every movement, every word, every glance mattered. The ceremony unfolded with a rhythm that was both unfamiliar and beautiful. Songs were sung, dances performed, and rituals observed. The outsider observed carefully, learning as he went, adjusting his actions to align with the customs. The warriors maintained their disciplined presence, their eyes sharp, their gestures precise. The outsider's respect and careful attention did not go unnoticed. At one point, the chief approached him directly. "You have shown respect," he said, his voice calm but serious. "But respect alone is not enough. You must show courage, humility, and understanding. Only then will you be honored among us." The outsider nodded, understanding that his journey within this village had only just begun. The morning passed with tests, observations, and small demonstrations of skill and respect. Each challenge was designed not to humiliate, but to reveal character. The outsider faced each one with honesty, patience, and careful attention, learning the deeper meaning behind each ritual. The warriors observed, their expressions a mix of curiosity and approval. The villagers whispered among themselves, noting the outsider's courage and willingness to adapt. By mid-morning, the outsider felt a sense of connection forming. He was still a guest, still an outsider, but the villagers began to see him as more than that. A person willing to honor their traditions, to engage with their culture, and to act with integrity. The chief's daughter remained at his side, her calm presence a steadying influence. Together, they navigated the intricate web of rituals, gestures, and expectations. The drums signaled the next phase of the ceremony. The warriors shifted, forming a protective circle around the main square. The outsider observed the precision, the discipline, and the unity of these men who carried the weight of tradition on their shoulders. He realized that today was not just a celebration, it was a lesson in courage, honor, and human connection. Every detail, every movement, every gaze mattered. As the sun climbed higher, the outsider felt a quiet determination growing within him. He understood that his actions in the coming hours would define his place in this story. He was no longer just a traveler. He was a participant in a living tradition, a witness to the strength and beauty of a culture that had endured for generations. And though fear lingered, it was tempered by respect, honesty, and a growing sense of belonging. The chief watched him carefully, the warriors followed his lead, and the villagers whispered their observations. The outsider had survived the morning trials, but the day was far from over. He still had to demonstrate his courage, his understanding, and his respect in the full context of the wedding ceremony. Yet with each passing moment, he gained confidence, learning the rhythm of the village, the flow of the customs, and the depth of human connection that transcended words. The square was alive with anticipation. Villagers, warriors, and the chief himself waited for the next moment, knowing that the outsider's actions would either honor or disrupt the sacred traditions of the day. And as the outsider prepared to step forward once more, he felt a mixture of fear, determination, and wonder. He had come seeking understanding, and now he was living it, experiencing a day that would be remembered not just for the wedding, but for the courage, respect, and honesty that guided every action in the presence of 321 warriors. The air in the village square grew heavier as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the gathering. The drums had stopped, leaving a moment of silence that seemed to hold the entire village in suspense. The warriors stood in disciplined formation, their eyes alert, their movements precise. Every villager seemed to hold their breath, waiting for the next moment in a day that already felt extraordinary. The outsider felt the weight of their attention pressing down on him. He had navigated the early morning rituals, shown respect, and observed customs carefully, but now he faced the heart of the challenge, the chief himself. The chief's presence was commanding even in this open space. His robes were richly decorated, each symbol telling a story of lineage, leadership, and tradition. His eyes swept across the square, pausing briefly on each warrior, each elder, and then finally resting on the outsider. There was no anger in his gaze, only a steady assessment, a silent weighing of character. The outsider straightened instinctively, bowing slightly, mindful of every gesture. He knew that words alone would not be enough. His body language, his composure, and his honesty would all speak in their own way. The chief approached slowly, each step deliberate. He stopped a short distance from the outsider, his expression unreadable. "You have come into our village in a time of great importance," he began, his voice deep and steady. "You have observed our customs and shown respect, yet there remains a question. Are your intentions true? Do you understand what it means to stand here among my people in this moment?" The outsider swallowed hard, feeling the eyes of the 321 warriors and the assembled villagers upon him. His mind raced. He had come seeking understanding, adventure, and knowledge, not trouble. He had never intended to disrupt any tradition, and yet the reality of standing before the chief in the presence of so many disciplined warriors made him realize that respect alone might not suffice. He nodded slowly. I came as a traveler," he said carefully. "I wanted to learn, to understand, and to honor your ways. I did not mean to disrupt or offend. My only wish is to show respect and to follow your customs as best I can." The chief's eyes narrowed slightly, studying him as if searching for hidden motives. The villagers whispered among themselves, curious to see how the chief would respond. The warriors shifted slightly, their hands tightening around the spears they held. The outsider felt the tension, a living thing that seemed to hum in the air, making his heart race faster. He knew that any hesitation or misstep could be disastrous, yet he also sensed that honesty and humility could carry him through. At that moment, the chief's daughter stepped forward. Her movements were graceful, calm, and deliberate. She stood beside the outsider, her presence a quiet support. She spoke softly, her voice carrying just enough for those nearby to hear. "Father," she said, "I have seen him. He has shown respect. He has followed our customs and observed our ways. I believe his intentions are true." The chief looked at her, his expression a mixture of pride and contemplation. Her words carried weight, and yet he did not speak immediately. Instead, he turned to one of the elders, an older man with silver hair and eyes that had seen many seasons. The elder stepped forward, nodding to the chief before speaking. "We must test his understanding," he said. "Intentions alone are not enough. Courage, humility, and respect must be demonstrated. Only then can he stand among us with honor." The outsider felt a surge of fear. He had anticipated challenges, but now it was clear that he would have to prove himself in ways he had not yet imagined. The chief's daughter placed a reassuring hand on his arm, her touch gentle, grounding him in the moment. He took a deep breath, reminding himself that he had faced difficulties before, though none like this. The day was not merely ceremonial. It was a test of character, a living tradition that demanded courage, honesty, and understanding. The first task was simple in appearance but difficult in execution. The elder handed the outsider a ceremonial staff, carved with intricate designs. "This staff symbolizes our village's honor," the elder explained. "To hold it is to show respect, to carry the weight of tradition, and to demonstrate your understanding of our customs." Walk with it through the square, presenting it to the chief and the warriors without hesitation or error." The outsider nodded, gripping the staff carefully. Its weight was heavier than he expected, yet it seemed almost alive in his hands, as if carrying the history of the village itself. He stepped forward, his movements deliberate. Each step was measured, each gesture precise. The villagers watched intently, the warrior's eyes fixed on him with silent scrutiny. He could feel the tension building with every step, yet he focused on the rhythm of his own movements, the weight of the staff, and the importance of respect. As he walked, the chief's daughter followed slightly behind, her calm presence giving him confidence. The villagers whispered quietly, some offering smiles of encouragement, others remaining cautious. The warriors remained still, their discipline unwavering. The outsider felt every eye upon him, every heartbeat echoing in his chest. He knew that one misstep could undo everything, yet he moved steadily forward, determined to honor the village's customs. When he reached the center of the square, he paused, presenting the staff with a slight bow. The chief's eyes studied him, searching for sincerity, courage, and understanding. The elder nodded slowly, a faint smile crossing his lips. "You have shown respect," he said. "But understanding requires more than gestures. You must also demonstrate humility and wisdom." The next task required him to speak before the assembly. The chief's daughter guided him to a small platform where he could address the villagers without stepping out of the circle of tradition. His hands shook slightly as he began, but he spoke with honesty. "I am a traveler," he said, "and I have come far to learn and to witness the beauty of your village. I did not come to cause trouble or to disrespect your customs. I only wish to honor your ways and to show that even a stranger can act with honesty and respect." A hush fell over the square. The warriors' eyes remained fixed on him, their expressions unreadable. The villagers listened carefully, their curiosity mingled with cautious approval. The chief's daughter stood beside him, her eyes calm and steady. Her presence reminded him that he was not alone and that honesty and courage were his greatest allies. The chief spoke again, his voice carrying across the square. "Words are important," he said, "but actions must match them. Respect, courage, and understanding are shown through deeds, not only through speech. You must now demonstrate your willingness to act with honor in the face of challenge." The challenge that followed tested more than skill or strength. The chief presented a small task, to carry a ceremonial flame from one end of the square to the other without extinguishing it. The flame symbolized the village's spirit, its history, and its honor. To fail would be to show carelessness or lack of understanding. To succeed would demonstrate respect, focus, and courage. The outsider took a deep breath and accepted the flame. Its warmth was immediate, and the small flicker seemed fragile, as if aware of the weight it carried. He stepped forward carefully, balancing the flame and keeping his movements deliberate. The villagers watched silently, their eyes reflecting the sunlight and the importance of the moment. The warriors remained still, observing his every step, ready to note any misstep. He moved steadily, adjusting his pace to maintain the flame's glow. The chief's daughter walked beside him, offering a quiet encouragement through a nod or a subtle smile. His focus sharpened, and he realized that the challenge was not simply about carrying the flame. It was about demonstrating care, attention, and respect for the traditions of a people who had welcomed him despite his status as an outsider. By the time he reached the other end of the square, the flame still alight, a sense of relief washed over him. The chief's eyes softened slightly, the elder nodded in approval, and a murmur of approval rippled through the villagers. The warriors relaxed their stance, their respect earned through the outsider's careful attention and courage. For the first time that morning, he felt that he had begun to earn a place among them, however temporary. The chief's daughter stepped forward once more, her voice soft but clear. "He has shown respect, courage, and understanding," she said. "He has acted with honesty and humility. Let this day mark not only the celebration of tradition, but also the recognition of character and integrity." The chief looked at her, then back at the outsider, and finally nodded. "You have taken the first steps," he said. "There is still more to learn, but you have shown that even a stranger can honor our ways. The village recognizes your effort, and the warriors respect your courage." The outsider exhaled, feeling a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and quiet pride. He had faced the chief, the warriors, and the traditions of a people far different from his own, and he had acted with honesty and respect. The day was not yet over, but he had taken the most difficult steps. He realized that courage, humility, and respect were not simply gestures. They were a way of living, a way of connecting with others, and a way of understanding the deeper meaning of tradition. The villagers resumed their preparations, the square coming alive again with movement, music, and anticipation. The warriors remained in formation, though their expressions softened, acknowledging the outsider's effort. The chief's daughter remained close, her calm presence a reminder that even in moments of tension, understanding and connection were possible. The outsider stood quietly, watching the village around him. He had come seeking knowledge, adventure, and understanding, and he had found more than he expected. He had faced fear, learned humility, and demonstrated courage in a way that was recognized and respected. And though the wedding ceremony itself was still to come, he felt a growing sense of belonging, a sense that even in a world far from his own, honesty, respect, and courage could bridge the gap between strangers and friends. The sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the square, the warriors, and the villagers. The drums began again, this time signaling the approach of the final moments before the wedding. The outsider felt a mixture of anticipation and nervousness, but he also felt ready. He had faced the test of understanding, humility, and courage. The next step would be the wedding itself, a moment that would bring together the chief, his daughter, the warriors, and the entire village in a celebration of tradition, honor, and human connection. And as he stood there ready for the next chapter, he understood something profound. That respect, courage, and honesty were universal, transcending language, culture, and circumstance. Today was a day of learning, of testing, and of connection. And the lessons he had learned would stay with him long after the drums had fallen silent, and the warriors had returned to their duties. The first golden rays of dawn lit up the village square, reflecting off the ceremonial armor of the 321 warriors who had been waiting since before sunrise. Their presence was both imposing and beautiful, a display of discipline and loyalty that commanded respect. The villagers, still hushed with anticipation, lined the edges of the square, watching intently as the final moments before the wedding unfolded. The outsider stood at the edge of the square, his heart pounding with a mix of fear, excitement, and determination. Today would decide not only his place among these people, but also the outcome of a moment that had begun unexpectedly, in confusion and uncertainty. The chief's daughter approached him, her steps measured and graceful. She wore the ceremonial garments of a bride, bright with colors and intricate patterns that reflected the traditions of her people. Beads and embroidery shimmered in the morning light, each detail telling a story of her lineage, her family, and the culture she represented. Her calm presence was comforting to the outsider, a reminder that he was not alone in this moment. He had faced the chief, the elders, and the warriors, and had passed their tests of respect, courage, and understanding. Now the culmination of the day awaited him, the wedding ceremony itself. The chief took his place at the center of the square, his expression a blend of pride and solemnity. The 321 warriors formed a protective, ceremonial circle around him and the bride, their spears and shields gleaming in the sunlight. The villagers stood respectfully at the edges, observing the traditions that had been passed down through generations. Drums began to beat slowly, a steady rhythm that signaled the start of the ceremony. The sound was deep, resonant, and powerful, echoing through the village and stirring the hearts of all who listened. The outsider stepped forward, guided by the chief's daughter, feeling the weight of the moment with every step. He carried no weapon, no adornment, only the lessons he had learned that morning, the importance of respect, honesty, courage, and humility. He walked carefully, mindful of the eyes of the warriors, the elders, and the villagers upon him. Each step was deliberate, each movement measured as he approached the center where the chief awaited. The chief regarded him with calm authority. "You have come far," the chief said, his voice steady and clear carrying over the square. "You have shown respect, courage, and understanding. You have honored our traditions even as an outsider. Today you stand here not only as a witness, but as one who has proven himself worthy of our trust." A hush fell over the square. The outsider bowed his head slightly, acknowledging the chief's words with humility. He felt a mix of relief and awe, knowing that he had earned the recognition of the tribe, their warriors, and the elders. The chief's daughter stepped closer, her expression softening as she extended her hand toward him. It was a gesture of trust and guidance, signaling that the next steps would require cooperation, respect, and understanding. The ceremony began with rituals that had been performed in the village for generations. Songs filled the air, their melodies rich and evocative, telling stories of ancestors, courage, and love. The villagers joined in the chorus, their voices blending in harmony with the steady beat of the drums. The warriors moved in coordinated patterns, their movements precise and symbolic, representing protection, loyalty, and honor. The outsider watched carefully, following the gestures and steps, ensuring that he aligned with the flow of the ceremony. At one point, he was asked to carry a ceremonial gift, an offering of respect and goodwill to the chief and his family. He accepted it with both hands, keeping his posture straight and his movements deliberate. The chief's daughter guided him, whispering instructions that helped him navigate the ritual without error. Each motion was important, each gesture symbolic of deeper meanings that he could only partially understand, yet he respected the significance fully. The 321 warriors shifted subtly as the ceremony progressed, forming protective arcs around the center of the square. Their presence was not threatening but ceremonial, reinforcing the importance of honor and tradition. The outsider noticed the precision with which they moved, the way every hand, foot, and eye followed a rhythm learned over years of discipline. He felt a deep respect for these men, understanding that their dedication ensured the continuity and dignity of the village's traditions. The chief's daughter led the outsider to the ceremonial altar, a platform adorned with flowers, carvings, and symbols of the tribe's history. She smiled gently, signaling that he had done well and that his actions had been recognized. The outsider bowed slightly, aware that every gesture mattered, and then he knelt respectfully before the chief. The chief spoke again, his voice solemn. "This ceremony is more than words or actions," he said. "It is a union of trust, respect, and understanding. You have shown that even as an outsider, you can honor our ways. Today, we celebrate not only a wedding but the recognition of character, courage, and integrity." The villagers murmured their approval, some nodding, others offering quiet smiles. The warriors stood straight, their disciplined presence a silent acknowledgement of the outsider's successful navigation of the day's challenges. The chief's daughter extended her hands toward him, and together they performed the traditional gestures that marked the union in the tribe's customs. It was a moment of connection, of trust, and of shared understanding. As the ceremony continued, the outsider felt a profound sense of belonging. He had arrived in the village as a stranger, uncertain and anxious. He had faced challenges that tested his courage, his humility, and his respect. And now he was not merely a witness. He was a part of a living tradition, recognized for his honesty and integrity. The weight of the day's events pressed upon him, yet it was tempered by pride and gratitude. The chief raised his hands, signaling the final moments of the ceremony. The drums sounded again, steady and rhythmic, filling the square with energy and life. The villagers joined in celebration, their voices rising in harmony with the music. The warriors, still in formation, began a ceremonial display of skill and strength, their movements precise and coordinated, honoring the union and the traditions that had guided the village for generations. The outsider observed, feeling both awe and respect. He understood that today was not merely about a wedding. It was about the continuity of culture, the power of courage and respect, and the ways in which human connection could transcend fear and uncertainty. Every gesture, every song, every movement was imbued with meaning, and he felt privileged to witness and participate in such a moment. At the end of the ceremony, the chief approached him once more. "You have honored our ways," the chief said, his voice carrying warmth beneath the authority. "You have shown that respect, honesty, and courage are universal, recognized even beyond the boundaries of this village. Today, you have proven yourself." The outsider bowed deeply, feeling a mixture of relief, pride, and gratitude. The chief's daughter smiled, her presence a steady reassurance, a sign that he had navigated the day successfully. Around them, the villagers cheered softly, the warriors gave approving nods, and the square was filled with a sense of completion and harmony. The celebrations continued as the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the village, the warriors, and the villagers. Food was shared, songs were sung, and stories of the day's events began to spread among the people. The outsider moved carefully through the crowd, mindful of his place, yet feeling more confident with each step. He had arrived as a stranger, but now he was recognized, respected, and even trusted by those he had just met. Later, the chief called the outsider to his side. "You have honored our traditions and shown respect in every way," he said. "The village remembers this day, not only for the wedding but for the courage and integrity you have demonstrated. You are welcome here, now and in the future, as one who understands and honors what we hold sacred." The outsider felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had faced fear, uncertainty, and cultural challenges, yet he had navigated them with respect, honesty, and courage. He realized that this day, this unexpected journey, had taught him more than he could have imagined. It was a lesson in human connection, tradition, and the universal power of integrity. The chief's daughter stood beside him one last time, smiling. "You have done well," she said softly. "Today is remembered not only for the wedding but for the respect and courage you have shown. You have honored us, and we honor you in return." The outsider nodded, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. He had arrived in the village seeking understanding and adventure, and he had found more than he expected. He had found respect, trust, and a place among people whose traditions were rich, disciplined, and meaningful. The morning that had begun in confusion and uncertainty had ended in celebration, connection, and mutual understanding. As the day unfolded, the village continued its celebrations. The warriors performed ceremonial dances, the villagers shared food and laughter, and the outsider found moments to connect with people he had only just met. Every interaction reinforced the lessons he had learned. Respect, courage, honesty, and humility were the keys to understanding, bridging the gap between strangers and friends. When the sun reached its peak, the outsider stepped back to observe the village one last time before continuing his journey. He knew he would never forget this day, the lessons, the tests, the celebrations, and the honor he had witnessed. He had come seeking adventure and understanding, and he had found a story that would stay with him forever. As he prepared to leave, the chief approached again, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Remember," the chief said, "courage and respect are always recognized wherever you go. Honor what you learn, and you will carry the spirit of this village with you." The outsider bowed one final time, feeling the weight and the gift of the chief's words. With the chief's daughter smiling beside him, and the sounds of drums, laughter, and song filling the square, he stepped forward into the world beyond the village. He carried with him lessons of respect, courage, and honesty, and the memory of a day that had begun with uncertainty, but ended in celebration, connection, and understanding. And as he walked away, he knew that he would remember not only the wedding of the chief's daughter, but also the 321 warriors, the villagers, and the living traditions that had welcomed him, tested him, and honored him, all in a single extraordinary day.